what kind of tea do we have here?
No, it's a beautiful blend of a pu'er and rose leaves, and it's sourced in Indonesia, so it's Indonesian earth.
Hi, it's me, fabuloushealth. I am so excited to bring you my first episode of Happy Cult. If you've been following along on my journey, then you're aware I'm working on starting a company, fabuloushealth, aiming on bridging the gap between Eastern and Western medicine. Happy Cult aims to do just that by interviewing experts across various fields and understanding how their areas of expertise can ultimately help you achieve fabulous health. Without further ado, I'm so excited to introduce my first guest, Myrah Peñaloza. She is a designer of life. I'll let her take it away.
A designer of life.
Perfect.
You know, I'm just designing life as it goes.
I love that. I love that. It's amazing.
The life designer, like, it's just, you know, I feel like there's two powers in the world that are an illusion, and that is, you know, what's bad and what's good, what's right, what's wrong. But ultimately, when we kind of get truer to the realization that there is just one power, and that power is, you know, divine spirit or divine creator or divinity or even nature, if you have a hard time relating to that, which is like the macro experience of our life, then that starts to dissolve, and then you start to realize, oh, I am that same walking infinite being on the planet, and this is all just a big play, and I'm the co-writer, I'm the co-producer, I'm the stage manager, I'm da-da-da-da-da.
We are the main character of our own movies.
Exactly. And if we don't like something, or if something doesn't feel in-aligned, or if we get caught in the illusion of, you know, two dualities, then you can rewrite the script. And I think a lot of people get trapped in that owning of that, or even realizing that, because we're so distracted by outsourcing, you know, versus connecting to the inner source.
And the way in which we live life is the furthest it's ever been from nature. We have to work that much harder now, really making that effort to connect with nature, the divine, ultimately your soul.
Yeah, yourself, your true self, the essence of your truth, And I found that tea kind of reminds me of that. It's the oldest beverage on the planet, other than water. And we don't know who reached for whom. Was the leaf reaching for the human, or did the human reach for the leaf?
Yeah.
Right? And in doing so, there's multiple stories of how tea came to be. One that I really love is that there was this particular person, and the story takes place in China, that he was sitting by a tree boiling in his cauldron hot water. And in it, a leaf fell. A leaf just fell from the breeze into the cauldron. And unbeknown to himself, he ended up pouring the water into his bowl, or maybe even drinking from the pot itself. And that was the first taste of spirit to him. Wow. So kind of the manifestation of that, which is, I mean, in those times, who knew what other flavors were reaching out to, again, vice versa. Right. Was it the apple reaching for the man, or the man reaching for the apple? You know?
We're all energy, right? That apple is energy, we're energy, and almost reaching for each other, right? Mm-hmm. It was, you know, that apple being like, I want to give you this energy, I want to give you this fuel, and him being like, I need this, I need to accept this.
Exactly. Yeah, that is not wrong. Yeah, because we first have to have the thought, right? And then that thought becomes the word, and then that word becomes the deed. So man must have had the thought too, and then that which, you know, has resonance or can mirror starts to become a magnet, right?
Yeah, we create our reality based off of our beliefs and our thoughts. Mm-hmm. And through, you know, practices such as manifestation and affirmations, meditation, being able to connect, we're able to dive deeper, formulate beliefs, formulate thoughts. And if we focus on and really understand, you know, what are our beliefs? what is driving the creation of these thoughts, then that's where we're able to grow, and that's how we're able to, achieve what we desire in life and turn, these dreams to our walking reality.
Yeah, there's a saying that my teacher once shared with me. She says, the deeper you go looking for something, you are going to kind of find that the more you know, the more responsible you are. And that takes a lot of courage to be responsible for the external, right? Like, oh, I'm the cause of the effect. So then within knowing that, it's almost like you have this divine duty to continue to work on the self.
Right.
And then the self can also be multiple selves, right? Because the mind is so complex. The self that's here is not the same self that's with my children. It's not the same self that's with my husband. It's like we have these mini hats, and each and every one of those hats needs to be, steamed and cleaned.
One of the ways in which you steam and clean them through tea?
Yes. So, it's a very basic and simple practice that is also the gateway to something so much more in its simplicity, because it's so beautiful. And in the steaming and cleaning of the hats, the tea liqueur itself kind of washes away the subconscious mind by instilling more presence, by instilling more being in the here and now, which is another phrase of saying being more present.
Right.
But that's, for me, I feel like that is the baseline of what we want to cultivate more of, is to really be here and now and with what is in front of you. One of my teachers shared with me that, and not even, he just kind of reiterated what the teachings of tea hold, and that is that any person can walk into a space for a tea ceremony, and whether their beliefs or their color or their race or their gender is, completely unagreeable to whomever's in the space, in that moment of sharing a bowl of tea, it washes away. It doesn't matter, right? Because the heart is inspired. The heart is awoken. And I feel that that's what tea does. It just opens up the heart and allows you to kind of awaken a little bit more receptivity, a little more humility, a little more acceptance, a little more respect. And all those things don't even matter anymore. And at the same time, without pouring myself into it.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Right.
So I allow myself to be still before lifting the kettle and pouring the water into the teapot, right? Because I want the self to be neutral. In many different practices, we talk about finding a neutral mind, and recognizing the protective mind, and acknowledging the projective mind, and then finding kind of that middle way. So this practice really allows us to be in that neutral space where everything is perfect as it is. And through that experience, you're almost being teleported to remembering your true essence, remembering that you are love. You were made through the act of love. How could you not be that? So, of course, everyone has their own, story. And because there is that polarity on the planet, certain things do happen that are unforeseeable. However, there is a choice. Do I let, that which happened to me that is, for some people unspeakable, be the thing that drives my life,
And defines them.
and defines who I am.
Right.
And it's not like you rewrite it or override it or bypass it, but you accept it as it is and forgive. And tea can also be a conduit of being able to forgive, because she gives her life away to you bowl by bowl, and how selfless is that?
In the first 8 to 10 years of our lives, we are in alpha brainwave state, and we are downloading information extremely fast, and we are taking in everything around us. So we see, our parents together, and that forms our understanding of love. And the first part and step to rewiring the brain is to realize and accept and acknowledge. And from there, we're able to heal, we're able to open up, we're able to reach that ultimate state of love, of joy. Like, that is the divine. That is what everyone is searching for. It sounds like through tea, you have reached that practice.
Through tea and also other things. Other things.
What other things?
Well, just being able to get out of my own way.
Yeah.
And my husband and I have a deep love and joy in practicing Kriya Yoga, which is Kundalini Yoga, to really move some of the dark matter in the brain. So Kriya Yoga is essentially really complex movements that are a bit sporadic, that are inspired through deep meditation practices done by the sages and the yogis that have come before us. And by the grace of being alive in this incarnation, we have been gifted these practices through a long extended lineage of those rishi yogis, right? And we're living in a time now that we're not yogis living in a cave anymore. We're like household yogis, right? We have to, we're realizing that money is a manifestation of God, and that's what generates this planet. Money, love, and sex. Sex, not so much anymore because it's very confusing. But, for the most part, we do realize that those mainly govern movement on the planet. And with the ability to now transmute those teachings into practicality and accessibility to the householder, right? The householder is anybody that, lives in a house and is not out in the cave, doing the work and holding, the energy of the universe to be sustained. But what I mean to say is we have these practices that have been passed down. And if we don't work them, someone else is going to work them for us, right? Kind of like the subconscious mind. We have a subconscious mind, and if we're not running the subconscious mind, someone else is going to run it for us. So
we see that happening all over.
See it happening, right? With the subtle programmings in the external, with a lot of imagery, a lot of not to say that technology is, the base of all evil, because it's not.
Right.
It just depends on how you work it, right? One must not be the slave to tech. One must master the tech, right?
Which is the same for ourselves, right?
Yeah.
We, just like technology, it has upgrades. It has software reboots. It has these cleanses, right, where you're upgrading the next software. And we don't focus enough on doing that for ourselves. And it sounds like through tea, through Kriya Yoga, that is one way that you're kind of rebooting your software.
Yeah, and if I don't do it, it's noticed. And as a woman, we have so many multidimensional facets. We have a very complex organism in our body that is our womb. We have a very complex generated endocrine system that runs hormones up and down to help generate and assess and intuit what the next move is, not only for our own thriving life, but our own survival life, right? And if those are being blocked, then we're neurotic, right? And we can't make a decision that's going to align us more clearly with the mission of why we're here, right? So when the system is functioning and operating at its, divinely intelligent way, then we can discern the right move for us intelligently, right? And that's what Kundalini Yoga and Kriya does for me. And my husband notices when I didn't wake up early enough to do my, Gyan Chakra Kriya. So he notices, and that's beautiful to have a partner to reflect that for you.
Absolutely.
Right? Because if you can't hear it, then you can't work on it, right? And like I mentioned earlier, part of being a person on the planet is that our work is forever.
It's ongoing.
We came here to learn.
Yeah.
Right? There's a beautiful saying that my husband shared with me a couple mornings ago, and he said, man is just a manifestation of God in fear. And that hit me pretty good, because it's like, oh my gosh, yes, right? We're just all like these, infinite finite beings walking around terrified.
Extreme media, they're provoking fear, right? It is, and that's a way to control, right? Fear inhibits us from reaching our divine. It inhibits women from, even being able to portray their feminine energy.
Oh, yeah.
And the world needs that feminine energy. Men, need that feminine energy behind them to support them, to make them their greatest self, right? If you look back in history and you study any, successful man, behind him was a feminine energy and a force. And you look at when his collapse was, and it coincides with when something happened in his relationship.
Yeah. Happening to his relationship, when the woman was, taken. Like the story of, I think, who is it? Hanuman's story with Sita and Sitaram, Sita gets taken from Rama, and then it weakens his empire, and then the demons come from the underground to destroy the human race and all this. So Hanuman comes and brings Sita back to him, and all is restored, and then Hanuman becomes this devotee, ascended saint or god, initiated in that way,
Yeah. You brought up a really important point that isn't talked about much that I would love to cover, and that is mentioning your relationship with your husband and how he can even tell when you hadn't practiced in the morning. And that shows that you guys have a special unity, right? To be able to observe and live with someone and just feel slightly when their energies are just a little bit off. And I would love to kind of dive into, how you view the importance of having a partner, how that allows you to raise your own vibration through someone else and having that support system.
Yeah, that is a great question. To start with that one, I would have to say that relationship is the truest form of yoga. That is the whole yoga practice. It's not the posture, it's not the meditation, it's how you can relay with the opposite sex and have it have longevity, have it have authenticity, integrity, unequivocal love that isn't, what would be the word, conditioned. I love you because through you I have this.
Right. It's not you're gaining something off of that love.
Yeah, exactly. And part of what makes a relationship and what's so important about having a relationship is that relationship needs to inspire you to be better.
Couldn't have said it better.
And that's truly the baseline for it. It's like we made an agreement, whether it was verbally, spoken or not. There's an agreement that you make that I'm going to be better. You're going to help me make myself better, and in return, I want to be better for you.
Right.
And yes, there is a very big confusion with getting lost in the relationship, which happens quite often. However, a teaching that was given to me by one of my teachers was, and this is just right after we got engaged, is she said, build your world, give him the space to build his own world, and then build your third world together. And I feel like that's so important, because then you kind of don't lose your uniqueness.
Right.
You know?
Your sense of self.
Your sense of self, right? And that's very important to keep cultivating. And we also find that gets lost in motherhood. You're not there yet, but when you're there, don't lose yourself in motherhood.
Yeah.
You know, keep nourishing yourself, but also, you know, don't go too off that extreme end where, you know, you just give the child to the nanny and off you go, because we're seeing that happen a lot.
Right. It's finding the balance, right?
It's
Everything is
finding the balance and being active in the relationships.
My mom actually, from as young as I can remember, always said, you know, find someone who brings out the best in you and makes you want to be better. Mm-hmm. And that is something that I have lived by. And that has really been like my North Star for both, you know, relationships, any type of relationship, whether it's, you know, a friendship or, you know, even just like a working business relationship, right? You want to surround yourself with people that bring out the best in you and make you want to be your best version of yourself, specifically your significant other. Mm-hmm. And it wasn't until about a week ago where I was journaling and I had this moment of realization where that saying, yes, she was talking about another person, but I realized we actually all have that within ourselves. Mm-hmm. And we don't need to live by that rule from external forces. But if we are doing the work internally, we are cultivating the best version of ourselves. And if we are doing, you know, the practices that allow us to be our best version, then that means we're on track. If we're following our passions, if we're, you know, creating and starting a store and following something that we have wanted to do and leading, you know, intentional lives, then it's not just because we are all one. And it's not that you're looking for this in someone else. You need it just as much in yourself.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And in return, you kind of attract that same mirrored equal vibration to merge with.
Like vibrations attract one another.
Mm-hmm.
And when you are vibrating on a certain frequency, those typically in your aura, those that you encounter, they're also vibrating on a similar frequency.
Yeah. It's being able to maintain it that's really a practice in and of itself. It's
right.
Like being able to continue to do the work that you've been doing to receive this, because you still have a breath.
Right.
The life is still there. However, you see it oftentimes that when people get what they want, or when people get the result of that self-internal practice and self-internal acceptance, the external world can come and deflect that. And then you can get trapped in another iteration of your subconscious programming of, you know, the words that may come through of who am I to be deserving of this, and the doubt comes in, right? And that can take you off your path. So always being able to take, you know, that evening, that night to self-assess and see where you're at.
Yeah.
You know, and how you can bring more of that into your life. How can I bring more union with spirit?
Yeah. The world brings us the gifts. If we ask, it will come. It will shine through. Mm-hmm. But we have to realize it, and we have to know to accept it and feel comfortable and understand how to accept it. And a lot of times it's easy to just kind of continue on without taking that moment to accept, because we don't really practice that acceptance unless we make an intentional effort. It's not something that we learn in school.
No.
It's not something that is discussed, you know, in mainstream media or even, you know, through song lyrics.
Yeah.
It's something that you really have to dive into ancient practices and do the work to understand, okay, how do I get to this point? Mm-hmm. Now that I'm here, what do I do?
Yeah. It's almost like the story of Christopher Columbus when he discovered America.
Yeah.
You know, it's like there's the shoreline, and let's just say that the world is round. Let's just, keep that in play.
I don't know. Is the world flat?
It's up for debate. But for this conversation, we'll just, adopt the fact that the world is round. And so when he was looking for land, I mean, an indication for him that land was coming was like logs in the sea, right? Birds flying by. And so there was this definite trust that land was at shore, was soon to come, and sometimes when you were speaking about being able to actually recognize the thing that's coming in,
Right.
quite often we get caught with like, oh, that's not it.
Yeah.
Oh, that's not it. Especially, I'm going to use a description for a woman that I've been working with who she's been trying to call in her divine masculine partner. And I keep hearing from her, oh, but he's not it. But he's not it. And it's just her kind of going against the grain of that which she's trying to seed and sprout, right? And so, of course, she's going to keep getting, no, that's not it, you know? Because in her vision or idea, the man is this, and that, right? But that is kind of forcing your will, right?
Yes.
And not allowing that. In the practice of tea, we talk about 3 ways of kind of cultivating self. And one of them is force advancing. We force advance to get what we want.
Yeah.
And another one is giving up.
Yeah.
And then the third one that could easily be profitable on both is to just allow space for the thing to happen.
Right.
And that space could be allow spirit to come in, allow, however you relate to the mystery of life, to come in and play a couple innings, and trust and have faith, like making a declaration.
We think we know what we want, but how often is it that what we thought we want is actually what happened and what we wanted? My partner and I talk about this being a very significant part of what brought us together. The first day that we met, we said everything that we don't want. And everything that we didn't want was what aligned. It's easy to know what you don't want, but knowing what we want, we think we want that, but we're not really sure. We haven't experienced it, but we have experienced and we know we don't want something.
But let me tell you a trick. Those things that you don't want, can you write down the opposite of those things? Because that will be the gateway of what you really do want. So if you say, I don't want a dishonest person, then that gives you
an honest person,
an indication that, you actually value honesty.
Right.
You want someone that has integrity, or I don't want a lazy person. Okay, that gives you an indication. Oh, I actually want a person that has, some kind of motivation that is self-inflicted, that you don't have to pull by the bootstraps to get them to do things, you know?
Right.
So there's like these subtle little, we're living in a cosmic joke.
We really are.
and the bottom line is that you just got to decide, am I living a romantic comedy or am I living a tragedy? Right. And then decide that that's going to be, your storyline or your baseline. Is there more lessons or more joy? More enthusiasm, more excitement, more drive for life.
What have you realized that's worked for you to help you get out of moments where you're feeling a little bit stuck?
Asking empowering questions and asking them aloud and trusting in divine guidance and divine intelligence, that nothing on this planet is not attainable. There is more than plenty, and it's your divine right to have a good time. So whatever pressure you're under, and that pressure can be depression, lack of being self-motivated. We're living in a time where there's such a big confusion period, You know, people having a hard time relating to themselves, having a hard time relating to others because we're so socially paralyzed by our technology because we've now become a slave to it by accident, not on purpose, but because it's shiny, you know, and we like shiny things.
Right.
This thing makes me feel good about myself, right? But in that, it's also created a big gap to relate to self. So one way and one tool for me would be, and will always be, to make space for nature.
Yeah.
You know, if you can't get out of your bed for whatever reason, make space to get out of the room.
Right.
And okay, you made space to get out of the room. Now make space to get out of the house.
Yeah.
Okay, now I made space to get out of the house. Now make space to get into your vehicle or to get onto the pavement and find nature.
Yeah.
And it doesn't have to be some Grand Valley escaped mountain, you know, top. It could be as simple as watching a stream, you know, running down between like rocks and pebbles down into, you know, the ditch, you know, like it's just as simple as that. Laying on your grass and looking at the clouds.
Even just putting your feet on the grass.
Even just putting your feet on the grass, on the sand, in the ocean, in the lake, in the rivers. Like, you need to recognize that as a society, that divide between spirit and consumerism is very, very heavy and is very, very strong. And we are programmed to believe that we're not deserving of that beauty, of that bounty. And by doing that, by being able to break out of that mind-constructed thought form, because it is a thought form, you give yourself a new lease on life, you know? And I encourage you to do it every day, to find pathways and gateways to connect you to nature. For me, tea is nature herself. You know, I have water, I have fire, I have earth through the tea itself, and I have spirit.
All the elements.
You know, all the elements are being invoked and brought in through as vehicles to help me remember who I really am and where I come from. And we all have it within us. You know, we all come from an indigenous soul. Period. There's nothing arguable about it.
Right.
We all come from that. Otherwise, where did we come from? You know, we all come from an indigenous soul, and through these practices and through different modalities, it doesn't have to be this, but you can find your own pathway.
And what works.
And what works for you. Right. You know, there's no judgment on this is better and this does more of that. Like, no, what you works.
That's the beauty of it all, right? Is that we are all one, but we're all unique. Your thing, you found tea, and through tea, you were able to cultivate your happiness, your joy, reconnecting with nature. And I'm sure that was a journey.
There's a funny story to that. There's a saying in the tea community that if you ever had like a little mini porcelain tea set, you were destined to like have this love affair with tea. And I did. It was gifted to me by my mom's mother, my grandmother. Rest in
That's
peace.
amazing.
And like I've always had, like I'd love playing tea time, and I would play tea time endlessly for hours by myself. I mean, I was an only child till about 5. And then my sister came into the picture, and I have a sister, you know, tea time all the time. You know, so this was something that it kind of was self-initiated through me, and it could have been maybe from a past before last. But in a nutshell, the tea has always spoken to me. It's always had a very profound and deep-seated impact in my life. I was always really drawn to Camellia sinensis in the preparation of green tea. I loved green tea. In college, it became more of a presence in my life because, you know, working late, studying late, and tea kind of just gave me this little bounce and little up, you know, and then discovering yerba mate, which is a tea that comes from Argentina, and that blew my mind. And I mean, I worked in different in different places. And when yerba mate came into my life, it was through a beautiful friend, Argentinian friend in the Kundaliniyoga community. And I have this admiration to things, like I love things, and it came, you had to have a special cup for it, and you had to have a special straw for it, and you had to have a special pepper, and so I'm like, oh my gosh, what I want that, like this is just so beautiful, and then having kind of experiences of feeling my heart outside of my body, like that tea was actually very, very strong, and even having it speak to me, like slow down, less is more, understand me better, and listening. And listening to that. And in Los Angeles, so I grew up in Riverside County, which is Inland Empire, east of Los Angeles, which is about, depending on traffic, about a 2-hour drive. And when I went to college, I dropped out. I realized that I can't work under a structure format that way. I'm just too creative. I just kind of break the mold. And I ended up moving to Los Angeles. And what was so funny is that it kind of went against my dad's, what success looks like. Because Los Angeles, to the immigrant family, is known as like the ghetto. And it's where you work to get out of, because as an immigrant family, you first land in Los Angeles and you're in the ghettos, right? So my dad's like, we got out of there and now you're going back. But for me, it was, and it still is this creative hub, you know? And I just was so brought to so many different strings of spirituality and self-fulfillment and self-understanding. And one of those was through tea. And I remember this man, his name was Aaron at the time, sitting in this church chapel in the corner in the dark with like one of those press coffee dispensers, which just dispensed water, and a little Ishiin teapot, which is like a red clay teapot, and these tiny little cups. And he had it just laid out there inconspicuously, like just nobody was making a big deal out of it. And it was an event that was held at this, like in the middle of Los Angeles, in this old abandoned church that was turned into this kind of yogic, spiritual, like evening fest, right? And there was like inspirational speakers and a couple of yoga, not even facilitators. There were like yoga teachers just doing like little demos, like acro yoga or something like this. And it was the scene. It was what you did, like you're just like spiritually enlightened. I get these things. And I remember sitting with him, and he didn't say a word, and he just poured me tea. And I remember being so suspended in that moment of his stillness, where the noise outside of me just slowly faded into nothingness. And this little tiny cup that maybe had like, I don't even know, 15, 20 drops of tea liquor moved me so profoundly and so deeply. And I never saw him again. And then a couple years later, a friend of mine by the name of Taylor, she was coming back from her travels, and she was hosting this event. She's like, I want to invite you to this tea ceremony, and we'll just kind of, look at this cosmic event that's happening in the stars. And it took me back to that moment. And then she reiterated that she was just with him in Taiwan. And so it was just like this whole like connection of the dots. And I'm like, oh my gosh, yes, I met Aaron, and then he disappeared. She's like, no, he's living in Taiwan now, and he's got this whole tea community.
That is beautiful.
Global tea network that he's moved in and really steeped in deeply, and the rest is history. And tea has really been the gateway for my life and has really inspired this brand of, merging and weaving with nature, with the integrity of honoring her, regenerating her, being mindful of where things are sourced, how things are made. And it's taking on a life of itself. And I've just gotten out of the way and giving it its space to reveal itself.
Learning to take a step back.
And I wasn't looking for anything either. I was just in the moment. I was
Living.
I was just kind of going. I knew that school wasn't for me, and I knew that I wanted to do something more. I just didn't know what it looked like. And I don't know if these are things that were inherently mine due through my ancestral lineage, but there was no struggle in that surrender. There was no struggle in the wanting to grasp for more. There was just this allowing things to happen. And the more I followed that, the more it kept confirming itself. Yeah, you are collaborating with something greater.
Yeah, less is more, right? When you take a step back and you let the signs and everything around you work, you'll find your way. And allowing nature and Mother Earth, right?
Yeah.
Our Creator to take charge, to give you what you ask for.
We think we're destroying her. That's the irony.
Yeah.
We're like, she in one blink of an eye can wipe us right out.
Yeah.
Right? And the funny thing is that she is so resilient in all of the resistance that we place upon her.
Yeah.
And then there's a law of non-resistance that we don't understand as a human species. And that is, again, to just allow things, guide them through thought. My intention is to experience more of this. My intention is to, cultivate this. My intention is to be this. Yes, give yourself like a barometer and a guideline and an intention list for your own self-soothing nature. However, then get out of the way.
Yeah.
And trust that divine intelligence or that supreme consciousness, which is known as our, we have three mental projections, which I mentioned earlier, that also relate to the consciousness, the subconscious, and the supreme consciousness, or it's also known as verb conscious, right? And in understanding that, knowing or intuiting that the subconscious mind is the soul. And our mission here is to bridge spirit and soul together.
Right.
And if the subconscious is tainted with, hateful thoughts or, unprocessed grief or ill will to others or, my traumas and my disasters and my mother said I could amount to nothing, so this is what's being relayed, then we're trapped in that Maya, we're trapped in that illusion.
Right.
So,
and it's resulting in habitual patterns that aren't benefiting us. That perspective, it holds so much power. And dating back to centuries of history, right? If you look at ancient texts, they're all saying the same thing. And it's all alluding to this same idea of taking a step back, of reconnecting with yourself and allowing for things to happen. They will come.
I mean, because we've fed so much the idea of, duality, and the gravitational force that we have on the planet can be very heavy. If we let that pressure push us down, then we'll just stay down. And I mentioned earlier too that cultivation of self, of how, we want to work on ourselves to be better. If we stop working on ourselves and we fall down this kind of moving up, right? The getting out of that fall is more intense. Right? This is why having a practice, whatever it looks like for you, and to work it is so important.
Maintaining
and it's so
it.
valuable, and there's no price for it. And it doesn't want to be shared. It doesn't want to be taught because the powers that be don't want you to realize your own power. Right? They want to keep you and stay in line.
It's easier to control.
Yeah, it's easier to control people that don't have personal power.
Right. Those that remain in power stay in power. Those that are controlled continue to remain controlled. By maintaining a practice, cultivating that power within, that is how you reach joy, happiness, fulfillment. That is, you finding the essence of yourself. And we really can't be one without these practices, whatever said practice it is that works for you. But if you're not putting into the work, how can you expect to see the results?
Exactly. Yeah. And a lot of people want the quick fix.
Right.
And the instant gratification and
So it sounds like your quick fix recommendation would be to step outside and be with nature.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And that's just a micro.
Yeah.
And what's infinitely possible.
Yeah.
And you also, you're going to have to want to get out of your own self-wallowing. You're going to have to want to be better in order to get out of it.
You have to want it.
Yeah, because no one's going to do it for you.
Right.
And sadly, we live in a culture and a society that everyone's too self-absorbed to even worry about their neighbor. We're not taught to worry about our neighbor. How are you doing? When really it's, there's a saying that says, instead of asking people what's wrong with you, the correct phrase should be, who's wrong with you? Because there's always this, it's not things are happening at us, it's that we are, again, striving in the external to make things not necessarily default and make us wrong, but we're constantly either complaining about others, comparing ourselves to others, or competing with others. So the question is, to take it deeper, going back to your previous question, and I answered it with, ask empowering questions. And that empowering question is, who's the matter with me?
Right.
Who
Yeah, I like that.
is, who am I upset with? Who do I have resentment towards? Who am I jealous of? Who am I, envious towards? Who am I mad at? And get to the root of it.
Right.
People are
And
half of the time.
A lot of times it could be self.
And a lot of times it could be self. But for majority of people, it's their parents. I'm mad at my dad.
Right.
Or whoever, right?
Because that's who we're around when we
little.
are, and that when we're little, and that's when we're most influenced.
And forgiveness is a big key, a
Yeah.
big ingredient in the self medicine.
And it's hard, especially throughout your childhood. We either choose to not go there and not think about it, or it's so rooted in the subconscious that we're not even made aware that it's there. And through patterns that you're seeing in your life, you can start to uncover, okay, I think this is something that I might need to face. But if we're not consciously paying attention,
But because the subconscious is so smart, and we have to work it in order to change it, or to merge it, or to remind it that it itself is the soul power, it tricks you.
yeah,
It's not that you don't remember that that's the cause of the problem, is that the soul doesn't want to change.
right,
That means that if I then relinquish my victimization to this experience, then that means that I have to grow.
Right.
And I'm very comfortable in my self-following.
it's an identity, and
Yeah.
the second you lose that,
Who am I?
who
now?
am I?
Exactly.
It's a relief, and it's how you grow, and you can't grow without it. But it's just like anything, it's change, it's different.
It's change, yeah. And change we often, again, associate with fear.
Yeah.
The scare, the fear of the unknown.
Yeah.
We don't know what's on the other side of it.
Yeah.
Right? So trust that when there is fear, it's just an opportunity for you to be more courageous.
That is beautiful. Trust that when there's fear, it's an opportunity to be more courageous. If we, continue to live by that, and we say that every day, there's nothing that we can't accomplish.
Yeah.
Such a beautiful, beautiful conversation. Myrah, you are such an inspiration, and your wisdom and knowledge, it goes so deep. And I very much enjoy having these conversations with you.
Same.
And really, really appreciate your time and being able to share with others. It's so special. She is so special, and it was such an honor. So thank you very much.
My pleasure.
My life designer.
I mean, it feels right.